Okay. All right, so I am going to start off by finishing up the PowerPoint that we were working on. I think we were right about here. We talked briefly about functions. But if you want the PowerPoint again, like I said, I uploaded it into CourseDen. You can download it. You'll have a copy of the PowerPoint. But so we're going to talk a little bit about math expressions. They're oddly enough very much like what you learned in any of your math classes. There's a few differences, but they're not. They're for edge cases kind of thing. Your generation does this anyway. Mine, I have to get used to it. We use the star for the multiplication instead of an X, that sort of thing. So slashes. Us old folks, we had to get used to that. So math works the same way. If you're assigning a value to a variable, you use a single equal sign. One of the things that'll trip you up a little bit is when you're comparing to see if something is equal to each other, you use a double equal sign. You have to differentiate whether you're assigning or comparing. So we had to come up with a way to do that. So if you type these calculations into the idle window that comes up and you just do command lines and you hit enter, it'll give you the answer. Just like if you type it into your calculator. If you assign it to a variable, it puts it into the variable, then you have to print the variable to get the value out. But it works the same way. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, all pretty much the things that you have done since what, 3rd, 4th grade. Now, there is one weird one here. It has goodbye plus John. You guys think that's a valid Python command? This one that says S1 is equal to goodbye plus.
I mean, technically valid, or
What do you think's gonna happen if I type that in Python?
it's goodbye, Tom. Goodbye. Tom is immediately gonna be after it. If you're checking.
Yeah. So you can add 2 strings together. When you do, it creates a new string that is just the 2 things exactly as they are run together. If you need spacing between the 2 things, you have to add those in manually. But so it will just produce a new string that says goodbye, John, with a comma in it. Yeah. It's got a fancy name. It's called concatenation. We can concatenated 2 strings together. But what we did is we took 2 strings, shoved them together, and made a new string. They don't replace the old strings. They created a new one. So that's just one of those things. Now, it's not a math kind of situation. It's a string addition. So if we follow this example through, we say x is equal to 3. That means we have assigned x the value 3. So now the little box in memory with the label x on it is holding the number 3. If we go down to the next way to x is equal to x plus 2, we're going to evaluate the math on the right-hand side first, and then whatever that evaluates to is now going to be assigned to x. So it's going to come in here and it's going to go 3 plus 2 is 5. I'm going to put 5 into x, which erases or throws away the value that was already in there. So now x is equal to 5. Right? So y is equal to x plus x. So x plus x is 5 plus 5. So y is now equal to 10. What's the value of x after that happens? Anybody? So if I ran this last line, y is now equal to 10. What is x's value after that line happens? 5, because x didn't change, because we didn't set it equal to it. We didn't assign it. Does that make sense? Okay. And you're going, why is she explaining these things? We understand it. Because it is really easy to get mixed up when you're typing code and think that you have saved a value into a variable because you made a change. But until you implicitly set it equal to itself, it does not replace the value. Yeah.
And you're saying the important part about that is remember that those are not set.
Yeah, these did not change.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do this, you can't get to this. Right? And this line doesn't affect the actual value in the box. And it gets easier to go on, but when you start writing long equations, it comes in handy to be able to remember that you don't have to change one variable's value to create a new variable value. Guess I should put this in presentation mode. There are some additional math operators that you probably haven't used on paper that we are going to be using in computer science. So the percent sign here is not asking for a percentage. It's actually getting the remainder from the whole number division. It's called modulo. So if we want to get the modulo of x modulo 5, what it's saying is 16 divided by 5 to give you 3 with 1 left over, right? So it's going to return the 1, not the 3. So in this case, y is equal to 1 because that was the remainder. So think back to when you first learned division, at least in the United States, and we had you do, 16 with the 3, and you put 3 up here and do the math, and then you do a remainder of what? Or at least I did. I don't know how to do new math nowadays. But it's that remainder is what modulo is going to be. Now, why is that something that you'd be interested in? Because if you have a large collection of data, and say you wanted to know whether or not you could divide it into equal groups of 5. You got a million plus records, and you want to see how many groups of 5 you have. Would it be even, or would you have some left over? You could use this, and if it came back with 0, it evenly divided. If it came back with any other number, it wasn't an even division. People also use this for other sorting things. You can use it for whether it's an odd or an even number. If you get if you get a remainder of 1, it's an odd number. Things like that. You use it more than you think you would. Just thinking about it right now. If you use double division signs, it throws away the decimal place. If you want to do exponential math, you use 2 multiplication signs. Promise we're not going to do a whole lot of major math in here, but I am going to have you do some because I want to see that you can set up formulas and use the symbols. Most of the time I'll give you the formula because it's been a long time since I've been in a math class too. So like if we're doing areas and stuff, I'll give you the formula, but I won't use to write it in code.
Quick question. Did you make these slides while you were sick? Like you did the syllabus?
No, I copied and pasted these slides, so if you find a typo in them, that I can't blame it on being sick, just email it to me, I'll fix it. I just saw it too. It's fine. Just go with it. I actually got a lot of this material from somebody else, so I'll blame them for it. Just, you might as well just get used to it. I can't spell at all. Spell check is the greatest invention in the world to me. Well, followed very closely by Grammarly.
Or we can add now,
Huh?
or like you're an ad. Thanks for
No, I wish they would sponsor me, but no, I'm really bad at spelling and grammar. That's why I don't teach English. Yes, sir.
Before we go too much further, can you go back to that last, I understand what you're saying about the percentage, doing the remainder.
Uh-huh.
Can you? Y equals X, how do you read that? Y
So
equals-
what it does is it takes the
Y equals 16, then what does that,
16 modulo 5.
because 5.
Is dividing by 5. 5 was
They
just
gave
a
you
number.
that,
It could be any number. It was just the number we put in this account.
it's arbitrary.
It's arbitrary.
Okay.
I could put 2 in there and
And
then I
you
would have got 0.
And use it later on. in the next- Okay, I got you. They gave us 5.
Because I have to make examples.
I thought you were, sorry, you being solved for it. but like-
I use the same one in both examples where you could see the difference. So the top one gives me the remainder of integer division. The second one with the 2 slashes gives me the integer part. There's a way, the fractional portion. So they do the opposite of each other. All right. So this is going to give you an error. If you do division on a number inside of quotes, it makes it a string. Strings you can't divide a number by a string, right? So you should get a red compile error when you try to run the code. This is what I'm talking about when I said syntax errors last time. This would be a syntax error. You try to do something that is not allowed. And this is why IDEs are great, because they catch things like that. Can you write Python code in just like a text editor? You could, but you better be really good at catching your own errors. If you're me, that's not a good thing because I can't spell. Or type, obviously. Yeah. So when you're doing code and you press run and something red pops up on your screen, you know you have a type mismatch, you have a syntax error. If you read the details, this one says unsupported operand for int and string. So if you did math and string shows up in your math anywhere, you got a problem. Now, that is actually going to happen with some of our code as we go through this, because when you import or get information from the keyboard, it is automatically read in as a string by Python. So we will have to typecast it and force it to be a number if that's what we had intended for it to be. Because most of the stuff you do have typed in, you do want as a string, you know. But when you do ask for a number, then we're going to force it to be what we want it to be. Yeah.
Is there predefined methods within Python that allow you to like just comb through the input to find something that can actually be used as a number? Would you say,
There are string commands that will let you look for certain things inside of the string, but as far as reading it in, it usually reads it in one line at a time, and then once you get that line in, then you can manipulate.
so once you use that sentence that includes actual number, and then you can use a string command to go through that string, find the number.
Yeah.
pull it out. Okay.
we'll do a, we're gonna get into detail more about strings and all the string commands as we get further along. But yes, absolutely are ways to filter your input, but you do have to specifically do it. There's also ways to read files and stuff that we're going to talk about too. I'm going to just briefly introduce functions. We're not writing functions yet. We will get to a whole chapter and start writing our own functions a little bit later. But you need to know what a function is to proceed at this point. Because we're going to be using a lot of the built-in functions like print. Print is a function. It's part of the standard Python library. You don't have to write the code for that. You don't have to reinvent the wheel for that. I'm going to strongly encourage that you all learn to use the resources available to you to look up stuff that already exists. There's no point in writing a function if it already exists, in my opinion. I'm lazy. Well, let's use what everybody else has already created. So a function has a name, and then it has a parameters list. So it has a name followed by an open parentheses and stuff, and then a closed parentheses. Or it has an open parentheses immediately followed by a closed parentheses. So what that means is anything the function needs to run will be placed between those parentheses, and that's your parameters list. So if we have a function that doesn't need any data, it's empty. So it's just an open paren and a closed paren. If it needs to know what it's printing, like print, it needs to know what it's printing. We put that in parentheses. If it needs more than one thing, we indicate individual parameters by putting a comma between. You can have 0 to many parameters for a function, depending on how the function was defined. In the API, which we're going to look at, which is the documentation that comes with every programming language has an API. Every good programming language has an API for you to go out and look at. I don't remember what API stands for. I can go back and look it up, but I'm not going to right now. You can go in and look and say, like you were working with strings, you could go to the string section. It'll give you a list of all the functions that are available and what the parameters are required and a brief description of what it needs to do and what it's supposed to do. So we're going to be doing that a lot as we go through this class too. So in this case, print needs to know what it's printing, so you pass it a string. You also can pass it a variable name. Draw unit square doesn't need anything because the unit square is predefined. And if you want me to explain what a unit square is, I'm going to ask if anybody's a math major and make them do it. Draw circle has 2 parameters. The first one is a number, which is the diameter of the circle, I think. Maybe radius. Diameter of the circle, if I'm not mistaken. And the second parameter is what color you want to draw it. If you see input, that means that it's getting input, in our case, from the keyboard. That we're going to get a lot of input from the keyboard. Later, we'll learn how to read files in, but right now we're going to use input. So input is the function we use every time we need to ask a question of our user. The information inside of the parentheses for that function is what you want printed to the screen. So the prompt for your user is the parameter for that. So if you want them to enter their name, then you would put inside quotes, enter your name. you need to set this function equal to a variable because it returns value that we want to save. You can run it without setting it equal to a variable, but if you do, it automatically gets it and it immediately throws it away and you can't access it. And it will happen. Happens to the best of us that, you're just typing along and you go, oh, why can't I get back to that? I didn't put the right variable right. It happens. Or I'll get an email that says, this didn't work. And I'll look at it and go, yeah, it did, but you didn't set the function equal to anything, so you didn't see the result. Or you can actually tell the print function to present to, you can do print and then call a function, if it has a return value, it'll print the value. But it doesn't save it, it just prints it to the screen and then it's gone. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm throwing a lot of information at you that doesn't have a lot of context right now, and I am. Because I have to get some of this terminology going before we can start coding. Determine letter grade is a function that takes a number value and based on what it is, it's going to return A, B, C, D, or F. Again, it returns a value, so it goes into a variable. A little bit more about the input function. Everything it reads in is a string, right? So if you want to enter the cost of the purchase, and then you want to enter the tax rate, those both come in as strings. And then if you try to do math with them, you get the errors, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to cast those. And I feel like it was a step. Yeah.
What do you mean by the string?
String is one or more characters. So letters, numbers, names, those are all strings.
Just like horizontal line.
It could be a paragraph. It could be any number, anything that is. String is an object that holds one or more characters. Anything you can type on your keyboard could be in a string. It could be multiple lines of text. And since it's an object, its size grows to fit whatever you put in it. Does that make sense? So in this case, it read it in as words and characters. Like remember my mailbox number, while the characters are 0 through 9 numbers, they're not actually integers or floats that I can do math with, because I can't math on my mailbox, right? Well, it'd be interesting math. So what we would do in here, before we try to do anything with these, we would want to force them to be numbers, and you can do that. Well, you could do that if my computer liked me. All right, I'll give you some examples of that. My computer lets me type again. I don't know why. But what you would do is you would take another step in here to say, since we're dealing with money, to change them to floats, because money always has fractional portions, right? We always represent money with a decimal place in it, at least in the United States, right?
Sorry, I was fiddling around with the slide trying to figure out why it's not letting.
I don't know why it's not letting me edit either, but
Same for us.
really, okay, I'll
Some slide itself.
I will look into that. Kirsten and I have been having some arguments. We'll go with that. But what we could do here is we can absolutely say, okay, I want to change these to floats, and it's really simple. You just put the word float and then what you're changing in some parentheses, and it does it. And we're gonna show you examples. I will swap out the Java version of this often because I teach both classes. And one does it one way and one does it slightly differently. So sorry, I will be. When you know more than one language, it messes with your head, especially when you're teaching them both the same day. There-
Say if you try to convert it to a float, it would run into an error, but
It,
actual string is that.
yeah, if you add an actual string in there and not numbers, when you try to typecast it, you get an error saying you couldn't do it. So if it's not the 0 through 9 digits, you can't force it into a float. There is a link, and hopefully it works. Maybe. Okay, never mind. I'll get you that link because my links aren't working either. But I can give you a link that'll show you some of the common errors that you'll run into when you're typing an idle if you want them. Honestly, by the time you get out of here, you'll have most of the common errors, kind of stuck in your head. You will get really frustrated with me because you'll be sitting there going, I don't know what's wrong with this, and I'll walk up and go, oh, you left that out. Just remember, I've been coding for 30 years. It's not that I any smarter or any better at it. I just know what the error messages mean because I have a lot of them memorized.
Soon I will too.
Yeah, you all will. If you stay in computer science, you will all have these memorized. So that's all of the slides. I know that deck covers a